growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Steve Rasner, and you're listening to The Lionhearted Dentist. First, a little housekeeping. Our fall courses that you heard me talk about in the last couple podcasts are indeed sold out at this point. So thank you. Those last couple who came in, I don't know if they were from the podcast or not. I know one came from a course I taught in Seattle. So looking forward to seeing you. It's going to be a great course. I'm only bringing it up because, seriously, these courses aren't that big. I only open them to 8 doctors that can actively work, plus observers. So if you really have an interest in this stuff, they do fill up kind of quick. Write to Beth, call Beth, and see about my 2022 dates, which we give 2 courses in the spring, March and April, and 2 courses in the fall of 2022. And 2 of them are extraction and grafting, which is really pretty cool and exciting right now because I've added new components to grafting that are teachable that I haven't done before, using biologic modifiers like GEM21S and PRF, platelet-rich fibrin. I've taught that before, of course, but more detail and even a very powerful bioactive modifier called Infuse. So we don't use that very often, but I'm employing those in our courses as well. And the other 2 courses are implants, and I know our doctors really enjoy how we set that up. Tons and tons of instruction, close instruction. Remember all this, no matter what state you're in, you're allowed to come to these courses in New Jersey and work live on patients. You're not on pig jaws. You're not on plastic models. We are working on people. And I know that is nerve-wracking if you haven't had a lot of surgical experience. And trust me, I'm very sensitive to that, and so are my co-instructors, and we make you feel very comfortable. We even measure the kind of cases you get in the beginning of Friday versus maybe well into Saturday when I think you have more confidence. So just check it out. Rasner Institute 2022 courses. Thanks for all you guys that have been listening. I had set a record in the month of July for downloaded podcasts. So, it's almost on 2 years I've been doing this. Probably driving some of you crazy, but I do have some good topics I want to talk about, really good. Because what I do is I take notes, which is kind of hard to do at the moment things happen in my active practice that I want to talk about. So we're going to start this podcast tonight with this. And we're going to entitle it, It Happens Every Summer, Doesn't It? And then not is going to be the follow-through word on that. It happens every summer, doesn't it? No. It happens because you allow it to happen. And the happen thing I'm talking about is your business takes a dive. So I want to talk about that because it's such a prominent mindset of my colleagues in this industry that, how are you doing this month in July? Or how you doing in August? It sucks. It sucks every July, every August. People are on vacation and, that's what it is. And I understand you saying that because that's what I used to say. And I remember almost the day it happened. I was in my old practice. I'd been in practice about 12 to 15 years. And sure enough, every July and August, our productivity, our collections nosedived. And the problem is your bills don't nosedive. Maybe your labs go down a little bit in those 2 months. But, the mortgage doesn't fluctuate, right? And the money you took from the bank to invest in all that ADEC equipment or whatever you're using and all the supplies you use, they didn't take a dip. And you can't lay your staff off and have a long-term staff. That's never going to work for you. So how's this all working? And so I remember saying at the time, I had a very small staff, that I refused to believe that it really had to be this acceptance that July and August would be down months of our 12-month year. I said, I think it's very much like the person in your life you know that says, I get a cold every July. I don't know why. And sure enough, they do. They get a self-fulfilling prophecy. They get a cold every July. They really do get it. They have sniffles and blow their nose, and they treat it for 10 days, and it's gone. And I really do think that it is a self-fulfilling hypothesis that you allow yourself to dip in July and August. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit that those things actually do occur. Kids are home, people go on vacation. It's kind of a zen, chill time of the year for a lot of people. And certainly having big cases or rejuvenating your smile may not be on the top of their list. I agree to that. So what you have to do is counter that. And I want to give you a shocking example of what can happen and what could have been done. It's shocking because I'm having a banner year. I've told you that. And I don't want to get up here and feel like I'm bragging to you week after week with records we set, but I do that because I know a lot of you follow me, and it inspires you, some of you, to feel you're that close to success. And a lot of you have achieved it. So this past week that your lion-hearted leader had was dreadful. I mean dreadful. The whole soup was not a good one this week. First of all, I had 2 new patients. That's it. I worked Monday through Thursday. I had 2 new patients on Monday, none the rest of the week. Okay? The 2 that I had on Monday, at least on paper, looked good, but they weren't. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that you can have an amazing year with a couple stinkers sandwiched in. And it's not a reflection that your whole year is going to be like that, but you do have to be accountable and see if you can figure out how did it end up that way. So I'm going to go back to telling you in a minute what I could have done. And I know that I could have avoided some of this, but I had a really, for my numbers, I had the worst week I've had probably in 24 months. Productivity was probably good in terms of new case acceptance, in terms of revenue, dreadful. I mean, just the fact that 2 new patients, that's it, came in is embarrassing. It's embarrassing to myself. Like, what kind of marketing, as I promote so much to a lot of you that have asked me individually and I've helped you with it, you know, I mean, I can't fault myself too much on case acceptance because I only had 2 cracks at it, not counting a couple things that came out of hygiene. Okay. Oh, let me tell you the coup de grace. So don't you notice in your own practice when things don't go well for a good week, like everything seems to be off? So check this out. I'm going to get back to the patients in a minute. I'm just sharing with you so you can know that I'm very much human and I very much experience things I think that happen to you sometimes. So I'm at my desk, which is across from what you'd call our reception, our front desk. And, you know, it's all open so I can see it. My door's open in my private office. And one of my workers comes and she's kind of walking past my door to my private office and says, "Do you need anything, Doc? I'm going to Walmart." Now, 9 times out of 10, I won't even question that. But I wasn't in the greatest mood because of what I'm telling you about this week. And she walks past and I said, what are you going there for? And the answer was pencils. Pencils. So I have a front desk receptionist. This isn't my high school kid that files charts or puts labels on charts or cleans the Windex of the glass in the office constantly. This was a main receptionist that was going to Target or Walmart for pencils. Now, I wrote my book, the protocol book, you've all heard me allude to that, 15 years ago at this point. And in that book, I wrote going out of the office protocol because many, many years ago, I realized that you waste an amazing amount of time by going out. Somebody goes out to the office and gets lunch. Somebody goes out later and takes something to the post office. Somebody goes out and buys pencils. I was completely mortified. I wasn't mad at her. I said, "You're kidding me, right? Like, is this a punchline?" No, there was no punchline. That she was going to get pencils. And so I didn't let her go get pencils. I got my book out so she could read that chapter about how ineffective that is for the office. If you really want to go out and do a personal errand, I'm probably fine with that, even on my time, as long as we're not sandwiched and out of our minds behind with work or there's a lot of activity in the office. And there wasn't, because I'm telling you about this week. Just wanted to tell you, I live in your world. Even me has to hear that. So I thought you'd appreciate that. So back to the week. So I had 2 new patients. One of them, he seemed good. He was 41 years old, a banker. He said he was a banker. I don't know. Maybe he robbed banks. That's mean. Here's what I dealt with. Picture this. He wanted his smile fixed up. So picture looking at a patient with no posterior teeth, maxillary or mandibular, spacing, some level of perio, not inflammation, incipient bone loss, poor occlusion, missing number 5, the first premolar on the right, and had 4. So he had 4 through, 13, with the exception of 5, and the lower dentition to match, along with one lone standing molar on the lower left. And he spoke kind of intelligently. He had done his homework. And so here are red flags to me. I had a podcast on this several years ago. Why has any patient allowed their mouth to get in a very needy way? Unless you just came out and said to you, if the patient said, "Listen, I've been taking care of my parents, my disabled brother," or something that is cogent that we can all relate to. Answers like, "I just got insurance," or, I don't know, I just want a smile makeover. Or tell me that you have a lot of work cut out to explain to this patient. And I painfully went through my protocols that you hear me share with you. I did. I went through everything I can think of to explain to him the value of a comprehensive care approach and why I just couldn't address his front 4 or 6 teeth, and to no avail. Now this is, you understand, we screen patients on purpose at the initial phone call. You've heard me talk about this. So I don't end up wasting my time. That screen basically tells this patient that no matter why they called, the only way I'm going to be able to give them a decent, responsible answer is to do a full set of x-rays, which he didn't object to, and a full exam. But this guy couldn't get it through his head why he had to replace the one missing tooth he had, and why he needed full coverage, and why we needed to talk about, he had advanced bruxism and advanced wear. There's multitude of problems here that are not getting solved without a serious commitment, which I told him, of time and money. That's not my goal, to have my patients spend a ton of money. My goal is to solve their complaints if I can. And sometimes you have to treat the whole mouth. And that was this gentleman. And it was so futile. I can't help but do what we all do, right? I mean, I've tried to share with you the importance of not looking at a patient and judging where you think this is going before you start. But sometimes we get in conversations with these patients, and by the questions that they ask us relative to the conversation that's flowing between the two of us, it feels like a complete dead end. I mean, him and I had a conversation for 15 to 20 minutes before I even looked in his mouth. I almost didn't even want to offer to look into his mouth. That's how frustrated I was in the first 20 minutes of this conversation. But I did diligence to it. He allowed me to examine him, and it went nowhere. That was one of my 2 new patients this week. And so I told you in the beginning, didn't I? A few minutes ago, I said, it happens every summer, doesn't it? And I said, not. So here's what happened to me this week. I've had a good summer, by the way, with the exception of this week. And you know what? The very fact that I'm even bringing this up into this podcast tells you how vigilant I believe you need to be. Can you imagine setting records, which I did, the first 6 months of 2021? Blew away any record I ever had for productivity, for collections, for the type of procedures we're doing. Really cool stuff. Really good year. And yet I have this one, maybe I've had 2, I think, this year, blowout weeks. And it bothers me enough. I mean, my attitude could be, it's an aberration. It's a weird week. It's the middle of the summer. Yeah, it is the middle of the summer, but I knew that. You know what happened to me? I got lazy. And I put it kind of on automatic pilot. I said to you, and I remember doing this in a podcast about a month ago, that even though I just came off a decent week, a 6-figure week of collections, I could tell that we weren't really engaged as a team. We weren't doing all the things we needed. What could have done different? I could have brought up and manifest and made happen in the months of April, May, and even June more, the need for better marketing. Because I really feel our new patient flow is, and it happens. I mean, I think I have some amazing marketing techniques for you. I keep saying this. I keep saying I'm going to do a podcast on it, but I don't think I've done many. And yet, everything eventually fades and ends up not working as well as it did. That's why I change my radio ads about every 6 to 8 weeks. Because no matter how good they feel in the beginning, they eventually wane in their effectiveness, or whatever message I'm putting out there. And I always put a variation of the same message. My message is always, we sedate, because it's too good not to include that if you do have a sedation permit. You have to have that in there. But my main message is trust and confidence in coming to our office. Trust that I'm not going to sell you. Trust that my work will work. And the confidence goes along with that. And part of the confidence is that we're not going to hurt you. And that goes with, for a lot of people in our community, sedation, which we don't charge for. I know it sounds crazy, but you have to write to me for that. And keep your letters coming because it inspires me. So I could have pushed it more. I told you I was going to, but I don't think I did. Do you ever have the patient that you know you hit it out of the park with? Right? You show them a mirror, you just did 6 through 11, or something you did for them, and they really love you. You can tell they love you. And they love your office. They get you. They get the lion-hearted approach. A lot of patients do. And you just let it go. You feel good about it for the moment, but you don't do anything with it. And I go through streaks of this. Sometimes I completely forget to capitalize on that moment Maybe I'm too busy at that day, and my staff doesn't pick it up either at times, and I don't think they did in the last couple months. You hit it out of the park with a patient. All you got to say is, you know what, we really appreciate that. But in the day and age of referrals, if you can put something on Facebook, Yelp, or Google reviews, it'd be so much appreciated. Just tell your friends, because this is what I do. We live for patients like you and to satisfy you. And I have meetings. I have little laminated signs behind my front desk. I want you to picture this. So the patients can't see what's behind their front desk. They're back there reminding them, don't forget ask for referrals. Can you imagine? I've been in business 40 years and I still do that. And I'm here to tell you that maybe not all this week, but part of this week's failure was the result of me not crossing my T's and dotting my I's. I'm certain of it. And because think about it, I was going through these weeks, week after week after week. I had never been that busy. I'm talking about from January through April. I had never been that busy. I had never had such a constant influx of NPs, new patients. I remember almost for the first time in my career being intimidated by it. Like, where am I going to do all this work? And that's why I'm still productive. I was productive this week because I have so much work I'm doing that came in months ago. When you have a big surgical implant practice, a lot of times you're putting implants in or grafting bone and you're waiting 4 to 5 months for the next step because you can't do anything in between. So that's how it flows, but there's always a case coming in to start to do the next phase. And so I was productive clinically, but no activity, no action. It was an absolute mortuary, in my office this week. Quiet. I've gone through 6 to 7 straight weeks now of at least one staff member being on break, which is part of the deal. I get it, but I don't think I fought hard enough, because I want to tell you something. Going back to how this podcast started, I did have bad July and August where productivity, revenue, everything dropped. I can remember thinking that the solution would be to work 2 or 3 days in the summertime as opposed to trying to fix it. But how I fixed it is I started preparing for July and August into spring by pushing my team for recalls, making sure the hygiene schedules were filled, stuff like that, checking my advertising, not becoming Dr. Neglect. Let me explain that one. When we're really busy, be honest. Did you ever think about this? If you have 8 hygiene patients per day in another room, and you spend 5 measly minutes, that's not a long time. So right? It's 5 minutes times 8, that's 40 minutes. Well, what if you have 2 hygienists, which a lot of you do? Now it's 80 minutes. Or 3 even. Where do you find the 40 minutes or 80 minutes per day? And sometimes what happens is you go into those hygiene checks, which is why I tried to get me to send you, which some of you have asked for, my Cliff Notes hygiene forms. What is that? All my hygienists bring in a slip that's about 8 inches high by 4, made out specifically to each patient that they're working on, and they drop that in the room I'm in. And it gives me a kind of a Cliff Notes of what's going on. Patient now interested, doctor, in replacing number 4. You spoke about it a year ago. So it kind of helps me prepare for what I'm going to talk about. How could any clinician be ready for the 16 to 20 different patients you're going to get each day in hygiene, and remember their history, remember what they were interested in last time they were here, or what work did you do, so you can talk about how'd you do with the upper right that we did last time, and really connect with this patient. And I think what happens sometimes is you get neglectful when you're doing that exam because you have such little time really to do it, because nobody can really schedule the time you need to break and go do hygiene. It's just an unspoken part of being in practice that I haven't spent a lot of time on it, other than the acceleration form I just alluded to. So just write to Beth or me, and literally it's a slip with the hygienist's name on it. Last x-rays, last exam, pertinent information, today's chief complaint, if any, last work I did. That all allows me. I mean, in the time I'm walking to the operatory to see that patient, I'm getting prepared because I'm not going to come in and go over every chart the night before. So that's what that's for. So here's the takeaway this week, guys. You can have a great year and have a couple stinky weeks sandwiched in, and I just had a doozy of one. Doesn't mean I predict next week will be a good week for me. I can tell you I'm not Mr. Rogers in my office when these weeks happen. I'm fully self-accountable. I look at myself first. What could I have done differently? I need my staff to remind my staff as proactively as I can that, we're working this summer. We're getting paid for what we're doing. So we all need to be here present, not still on vacation that we just were on for 10 days. I know staff members watching this might be mad when I talk like this. I just talk the truth. I'm telling you, I have staff members with me, many, at least 14 over 20 years, that when they're on vacation, they don't walk in on Monday morning totally ready and engaged for that day. And I'll end it with this. It's a lot of work. The hardest part of being the owner of a practice is understanding that you have the most to gain and lose by your success or failure. You do. And so you don't have time to feel, poor me, sorry for yourself when things aren't going well. You have to fix it because you're the man or the woman. And it's up to you to set the tone, to set the direction of the practice, to remind people of who we are and why patients should come to us. I have a really cool story for you to start the next podcast with about a patient that not only went out of network, but she was going to a DSO, which meant by coming to me, and it was a huge case, she would get no reimbursement from her insurance company, Zippo. We'll talk about that. I hope this helped for the week. Remember, it's okay. Just fix things. You have a bad week? Don't let it be a trend. See you next week on The Lionhearted.